What if I told you that one of England's most famous kings started his reign as a handsome, athletic prince and ended it as a paranoid tyrant? This is the story of Henry VIII, a man whose quest for power, love, and a male heir would change the course of history. At just 17, Henry became King of England. Picture a tall, athletic young man with fiery red hair and a charming smile. This Henry was a far cry from the overweight, bearded tyrant we usually see in paintings. He was ambitious, charismatic, and had a temper that would make a volcano look calm. His actions would reshape England's religious and political landscape forever. Prepare for a tale filled with scandals, beheadings, and a lot of drama. By the end of this video, you'll understand the profound impact of Henry's reign, which affected not just the nobility but everyone in England. Henry VIII's marital history is unlike any other in English royal chronicles. He was the only king with 6 wives, outliving all but one of them. Let's start with Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife and a key player in the drama that would reshape England. When Catherine first met Henry, she saw a charming, devoted husband, a far cry from the tyrant he'd become. As the daughter of Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella, Catherine was no stranger to royal life. At first, their marriage seemed like a fairy tale. Henry was attentive, romantic, and seemed genuinely in love with his Spanish bride. Catherine basked in the glow of her handsome young husband's affection. But as the years passed, Henry became obsessed with producing a male heir, and Catherine's inability became a source of growing tension. It wasn't for lack of trying. Catherine gave birth to several children, including a girl named Mary. But tragically, she suffered multiple stillbirths and infant deaths. Each loss was a blow not just to Catherine's heart, but to her position as queen. As the years went by, Henry grew increasingly frustrated. His eye began to wander, and he fathered an illegitimate son with his mistress Elizabeth Blunt. This only fueled his obsession with having a male heir. Enter Anne Boleyn, a witty and ambitious lady-in-waiting who caught the king's attention. Unlike his previous conquests, Anne refused to become just another mistress. She held out for the crown, and Henry was willing to move heaven and earth to give it to her. And Boleyn's rise to favor was nothing short of a nightmare for Catherine. Imagine watching your husband openly court another woman. Catherine saw herself being marginalized and threatened by Henry's infatuation with her lady-in-waiting. This would have unimagined far-reaching consequences, as Catherine wasn't about to go down without a fight. When Henry sought an annulment of their marriage, Catherine stood her ground. She believed God sanctioned their union and steadfastly refused to bend to Henry's will. Catherine's nephew was Charles V, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and she asked him to intercede with the Pope to prevent the annulment. The Pope did not want to upset him. So, what does a king do when he wants an annulment, but the Pope will not cooperate? Well, establish your own church, of course. In 1534, Henry was forced through acts of supremacy to establish the Church of England, headed by himself as supreme head. Talk about a power move. It was not just about him, though it marked the beginning of the English Reformation, which brought about significant shifts in religious and political landscapes. He didn't stop there either. With his right-hand man, Thomas Cromwell, he did away with the Catholic Church's power in England, disbanding monasteries and taking their wealth and land for the crown. For Henry, this was a jackpot, but it also wiped out centuries of religious tradition and social service provided by the monasteries. But not everyone was thrilled about Anne's rise to power. Enter Elizabeth Barton, the so-called Nun of Kent. Barton claimed to have prophetic visions, and she wasn't shy about sharing them. She warned that, if Henry married Anne Boleyn, he would die within months and go to hell. At first, Barton's prophecies were popular. She even had the backing of the Catholic Church. But as her predictions became increasingly critical of Henry's actions, she found herself on dangerous ground. Henry, never one to take criticism well, had Barton arrested and tortured until she confessed it were all lies, then had her executed for treason. It was a clear message: oppose the king at your peril. Despite the opposition, Henry and Anne finally tied the knot in 1533. But Anne's triumph was short-lived. After giving birth to a daughter, the future Elizabeth I, and suffering miscarriages, she, too, failed to produce a male heir. Henry's affection quickly turned to hatred. In a cruel twist, Henry had their marriage annulled just 2 days before he had Anne arrested on trumped-up charges of adultery, incest, and treason. She was beheaded in 1536, marking a dark turn in Henry's reign. Now, let's talk about Henry's extracurricular activities for a moment. The king had a wandering eye, and his mistresses were numerous. Elizabeth Blunt, known as Bessie, was one of Henry's acknowledged mistresses. She even bore him a son, Henry Fitzroy. This kid was living proof that Henry could father a healthy boy, which only increased his frustration with his wife's failures. Then there was Mary Boleyn, Anne's sister. You heard that right. Henry had an affair with his wife's sister. While it's rumored that Henry fathered Mary's 2 children, there's no solid evidence. But the fact that people even suspected it shows just how chaotic Henry's love life was. The court was a hotbed of intrigue, with everyone scrambling for the king's favor. Imagine a high-stakes game of musical chairs, but instead of losing your seat, you might lose your head. Ministers, courtiers, and even Henry's closest friends constantly feared falling out of favor. And let's not forget about Henry's spending habits. The guy made modern-day celebrities look frugal. He threw lavish parties, built grand palaces, and waged expensive wars. All this extravagance put a serious strain on England's finances. Henry turned to a controversial solution to fund his lifestyle: the dissolution of the monasteries. This wasn't just a matter of shutting down a few churches. The monasteries owned vast amounts of land and wealth. Henry could seize their assets and fill his coffers by shutting them down. It was a financial windfall for the crown but came at a substantial social cost. Many poor people relied on monasteries for charity and education. With the monasteries gone, they were left high and dry. Turn for Jane Seymour, Henry's third wife. After the drama of Anne Boleyn, Jane was like a breath of fresh air. She was quiet, demure, and seemed to calm Henry's volatile temper. For a while, it looked like Henry might finally have found his happily ever after. Jane managed to do what Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn couldn't: she gave Henry a son. Prince Edward was born in October 1537, and Henry was overjoyed. But the celebration was short-lived. Jane died just 12 days after giving birth, likely from complications of childbirth. Henry was devastated. He wore black for months and was nearly inconsolable over the loss of his true wife, as he put it. Just before these events unfolded, he had a severe jousting accident. The accident occurred at a tournament at Greenwich Palace when 44-year-old Henry, in full armor, was thrown from his armored horse, which fell on top of him. He was unconscious for 2 hours and was thought at first to have been fatally injured. But, although he recovered, the incident, which ended his jousting career, aggravated serious leg problems that plagued him for the rest of his life and may well have caused an undetected brain injury that profoundly affected his personality. Once sporty and generous, the king became cruel, vicious, and paranoid. His subjects began talking about him in a new way, and the turnover of his wives sped up. Even Henry's closest advisors weren't safe. Thomas Cromwell, who helped Henry break from Rome and marry Anne Boleyn, found himself on the chopping block. In 1540, he was arrested on trumped-up charges of treason and heresy. Despite his years of loyal service, Cromwell was executed without trial. His fourth marriage, to Anne of Cleves, was a political disaster. The most used moniker for Anne of Cleves is the Flanders mare. This union never had a chance from day one, and after just 6 months, Henry got an annulment because he found her unattractive or something similar. Talk about royal ghosting, huh? His fifth wife was the young and vivacious Catherine Howard, cousin to Anne Boleyn, whose age could have made her his daughter. At first sight, the aging king marveled at how young and beautiful she looked. However, rumors of adultery and his ever-growing paranoia trailed her down, leading to her execution as treason and adultery, which became the second time that Henry lost a wife through beheading. Henry's final marriage was to Catherine Parr, a mature and educated woman who managed to outlive him. She played a crucial role in reconciling Henry with his daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, ensuring their place in the line of succession. Henry VIII's storyline from a promising young king to a dictatorial ruler is a metamorphosis that would shame even the most dramatic reality TV show. When he ascended the throne in 1509, Henry was every Renaissance prince you have ever dreamed of: tall, athletic, and cultured. Fast forward some years, and we will have an entirely different man. By the 1540s, Henry had become synonymous with absolute power corrupts absolutely. He was obese, plagued by health issues, and more paranoid than any conspiracy theorist at a government convention. But let's not dismiss Henry as just another tyrant with weight problems. Despite all its scandals and beheadings, this reign significantly affected English history. We have already established that the English Reformation was just the tip of the iceberg. Furthermore, Henry also laid its foundation as England's future naval superpower. His expansion of the Royal Navy earned him the nickname Father of the English Navy. This was not just about having the giant toys on the high seas, but also a strategic step that would determine England's global clout for ages. Culture should not be left behind either. Henry's court buzzed with Renaissance thought and artistic creativity. He is remembered as one of the most charismatic rulers ever to sit on the English throne, whose love for art helped kickstart what became known as the Elizabethan Golden Age. It seems like quite an impressive achievement for someone mainly known for relationship problems. However, here things get complicated. Despite his accomplishments, there were brutal political executions throughout Henry's reign. 2 of his wives were executed by decapitation on his orders. Similar things happened to former allies like Thomas More and Thomas Cromwell after they fell out of favor. So, how does Henry stack up against other English monarchs? Well, he is unique. While other kings and queens had their share of scandals and controversial decisions, few can match the sheer drama of Henry's reign. He reshaped England's religious landscape, strengthened its military power base, and left an enduring cultural legacy. However, he also set new benchmarks for royal diabolism and paranoia. On a lighter note, however, Henry achieved what he most desired throughout his life: securing a male successor even though young Edward VI only ruled briefly after Henry's death. He also further secured the Tudor dynasty's hold on the English throne, which made it possible for his daughters Mary and Elizabeth to reign. Moreover, when Wales was added to England by Henry VIII, it ensured the consolidation of English power, thus laying the groundwork for the future establishment of the United Kingdom. Nor should we forget that he played a part in centralizing royal authority, good or bad, as it served as a model for today's centralized solid states created during that period in Europe, including France under Louis XIV. Want to learn more about tyrant rulers? Check this video about Emperor Nero, who set his own city on fire to build a gorgeous new palace.